The automatic doors of La Lumiere opened with a muted hiss as Ava Hartley stepped inside, clutching her small silver clutch like a lifeline. Her reflection in the glass had shown a woman prepared for a proposal, soft curls brushing her shoulders, pale blue dress that Colin always said made her look like a watercolor painting, hope shimmering in her eyes despite the knot forming in her stomach. 35 minutes had passed since the reservation time. 35 minutes sitting alone, pretending not to notice the sympathetic glances from nearby tables. 35 minutes of convincing herself that he would walk through those doors at any second, with a ring hidden in his pocket. She tried to steady her breath as she approached the hostess stand again, her voice too bright, too rehearsed. "Has anyone checked for a man named Colin Reeves? He said he had a surprise tonight." The hostess smiled, the kind of smile meant for children and people being gently pitied. "No update yet. Can I bring you some water while you wait?" Ava nodded, sinking back into her chair. Her hands shook as she rechecked her phone. 5 missed calls earlier in the afternoon from students asking about homework. 1 message from her mother. 17 unopened group chats, but from Colin, nothing. She tried to send him a playful text. "Where are you? Don't tell me you're stuck in traffic again." But even as she typed, a notification appeared before she could hit send. A single message, cold, precise, efficient. "I can't do this anymore. You deserve someone better. I'm sorry." The breath punched out of her chest, her eyes blurred. She forgot how to move for a moment. All she could hear was the roar of disbelief rushing in her ears. After 3 years together, he ended it through a text message in the exact place she had believed he would propose. Every detail she had imagined shattered into sharp fragments at her feet. She stood abruptly, nearly knocking over her water glass. Conversations hushed around her. Faces turned. She felt them watching her crumble in real time. A burning humiliation crawled up her neck. She had to get out. She had to disappear before someone saw her cry. Just as she reached for her coat draped over the back of the chair, a tall figure stepped into her path. His presence was immediate, as if he carried gravity with him. A man with storm-gray eyes and a calm, commanding posture. He placed 2 champagne flutes on the table with practiced ease and spoke in a low, steady tone meant only for her. "Sorry I'm late, Ava. Traffic was impossible." Ava froze. Confusion clashed with embarrassment. She opened her mouth to protest, but he lifted his gaze to meet hers, and in a whisper just for her, he said, "Play along. Trust me." Before she could respond, he pulled out the chair across from her and sat down as though this evening had been planned for weeks. And despite the chaos breathing down her throat, something in his voice, something quietly certain, anchored her long enough to sit back down. The room watched. The spectacle vanished, and the stranger saved her. Ava sat there stunned, her pulse still racing, her emotions ricocheting between humiliation and relief. The stranger across from her behaved as if nothing unusual had just happened, as if he truly were her long-awaited date, and this dinner had always belonged to them. When the waiter approached with an expectant smile, the man offered one of his own, smooth and effortless. "We will start with the chef's tasting menu, and the champagne stays." The waiter nodded and retreated. Ava stared at him, unable to form words. He leaned forward slightly, his voice low enough to keep the moment cocooned from the rest of the restaurant. "You looked like you needed an exit. I simply provided one." His tone was matter-of-fact, without pity but not without kindness. It unnerved her how easily he saw through her composure. She tried to collect herself, smoothing her shaking hands on her lap. "I don't even know your name." He paused, as if considering what version of himself to offer her. "Tonight, you can call me Ethan. If you want to leave, you can. But if you stay, I promise to make the next hour of your evening better than the last." Something in his steady calm loosened the tightness in her chest. She could have walked away, should have walked away. Yet the alternative was stepping back into the cold night alone while the echo of Colin's message gnawed at the edges of her heart. So she remained. She lifted her glass of champagne. "To unexpected rescues," she murmured. He touched his glass to hers. "And to rebuilding evenings that others broke." The sparkle in his eyes softened the edges of the day. For the first time since the restaurant doors closed behind her, she felt the suffocating embarrassment begin to ease. The first course arrived, delicate and fragrant. Ethan watched her reaction with quiet interest, as though memorizing the small shifts in her expression. So what does Ava Hartley do when she isn't being ambushed by terrible boyfriends in expensive restaurants? Ava let out a startled laugh that surprised even her. I teach English at Brookwood Middle, 7th grade, and I write a little, or at least I try to. Write? He echoed. What kind? Children's stories, picture books, small things that probably only matter to me. His gaze sharpened, not with judgment, but with intent. Stories for children shape the way they see the world. That's not small. Heat brushed her cheeks. No one had ever said that before, not even Colin, who always dismissed her writing as a hobby she would grow out of. And what about you, Ethan? What do you do? He made a thoughtful sound as he tore a piece of warm bread. I build things meant to last. You could say I'm in the business of stability. It was the vaguest answer imaginable, yet delivered with such quiet certainty that she didn't push further. Instead, she found herself speaking more freely than she had in months, unraveling threads of her day, her students, the tiny triumphs and frustrations of her classrooms. Ethan listened without interruption, without impatience, as though every detail carried weight. Minutes blended seamlessly into nearly an hour. The earlier heartbreak became a distant storm cloud instead of the downpour that had soaked her spirit. When Ethan finally leaned back with a small smile, she realized she no longer felt like a woman abandoned at a dinner table. She felt seen, and perhaps most dangerous of all, she felt curious. The night air outside La Lumiere wrapped around them like a cool silk curtain as Ava and Ethan stepped onto the cobblestone walkway. The city hummed low and steady, a quieter counterpoint to the storm that had been raging inside her only an hour earlier. The restaurant's warm glow spilled out across the pavement, but beyond its safety, the evening felt strangely unfinished, a suspended moment waiting to decide what it wanted to become. A sleek black car waited at the curb, headlights soft, engine purring. The driver stepped forward and opened the back door with the kind of reverence usually reserved for diplomats or royalty. "Good evening, Mr. Ravenswood." Ava froze. The name hit her like a sudden gust of wind. Ravenswood. She had heard it before in snippets of business news her colleagues watched, in passing mentions on magazine covers at the grocery store, in whispered conversations among parents about corporate giants. She turned toward Ethan slowly, confusion and disbelief mixing in her eyes. Ethan gave the driver a brief nod, but his gaze shifted immediately to her, studying the way realization flickered across her features. He seemed almost resigned, as though this moment had happened before with other people, other evenings, other hopeful connections. Ava's breath tightened as she fumbled for her phone, typing his name with trembling fingers. And there it was. Headlines, photos, Ravenswood Industries. A global empire spanning construction, technology, and infrastructure. A company synonymous with rebuilding the very world people lived in. Ethan Anthony Ravenswood, CEO, billionaire. A man who had just sat across from her sharing bread and quiet comfort. She looked up at him with a mixture of awe and sudden distance. "You didn't tell me." He exhaled, a faint shadow crossing his expression. "You didn't ask." That wasn't an answer, and yet it was. He watched her with something like caution, the kind of hesitation that belonged to someone used to people changing the moment they saw his bank account instead of his face. "If you want to go home, I'll call another car for you," he offered quietly. No pressure, no expectations. Ava felt the weight of choice settle heavily on her shoulders. Part of her wanted to run, to protect herself from yet another disappointment disguised as possibility. But another part, deeper and quieter, remembered the way he listened, the warmth hidden beneath his calm exterior, the way he stepped into the restaurant without expecting anything from her. She swallowed. "I don't want to go home. Not yet." Something in him eased, but only slightly. "Then let me offer you a proposal of my own. 1 hour. No titles, no money, no last names, just Ethan and Ava. If after that you want to leave, I'll take you anywhere you want to go." The driver waited in silence, the city humming around them. Ethan held her gaze with a steadiness that felt like an open door rather than a trap. Ava drew a slow breath, stepped closer, and slid into the back seat. 1 hour, she said, settling into the leather seat that felt too luxurious to belong to reality. Ethan followed her in, closing the door behind him. "Good," he murmured, his voice warm and unreadable. "Then let's make it count." The car pulled away from the curb, and for the first time that night Ava realized she was no longer running from something. She was running toward something she could not yet name. The elevator hummed softly as it climbed, its glass walls revealing the city unfolding beneath them like an illuminated map. Ava stood beside Ethan, clutching the rail as the ground drifted farther and farther away. The higher they rose, the quieter the world became, until the noise of traffic and evening chatter dissolved into a distant murmur. Ethan watched her reaction, not with pride or arrogance, but with a strange caution, as though he wasn't sure how she would take the truth of his world when she saw it in full. When the elevator finally stopped, the doors opened to a space so breathtaking it felt unreal. The penthouse stretched outward in a sweep of gleaming marble and tall windows, the entire skyline framed like a living mural. Crystal lights shimmered overhead. The air carried a faint scent of cedar and clean linen. It looked like the kind of place where important people made important decisions, where the air itself seemed too expensive to breathe freely. Ava stepped inside slowly. "You live here?" Ethan's expression was unreadable. "I exist here. Living is something different." The answer chilled her in a way she didn't expect. For all its beauty, the penthouse felt cold, almost museum-like. Each perfectly placed object looked untouched, a curated life rather than a lived one. No clutter, no warmth, no evidence of a person who laughed or rested or allowed himself softness. Instead, it was a kingdom in the sky, polished to perfection, fortified with distance. He walked toward the tall windows and gestured outward. "This is the part people envy, the view, the height, the illusion of being untouchable." Ava joined him, following his line of sight as the city shimmered beneath a net of lights. It was beautiful, but lonely, intensely lonely. She spoke softly. "It must be incredible waking up to this every morning." He let out a faint breath. "It used to be, before I realized how silent it is. Silence pretends to be peace until you have too much of it." Something in his tone shifted, a crack in the armor. Ava turned to him, sensing the gravity of what lingered beneath. Ethan's gaze remained fixed on the city. "This building, this company, everything I have built, it wasn't supposed to be about power. It was supposed to be about safety, the kind my parents never had." Ava felt her breath catch. The softness of his voice held a story. "The Ravenswood plant fire," she whispered. He nodded once, slow and heavy. "I was 16. They were supervisors who complained about failing safety checks. They died because someone else cut corners to save money. So I built a company where no one would have to die for profit. At least, that was the promise." Ava reached out in instinct, her fingers brushing his sleeve. "I'm sorry, Ethan." His jaw tightened, not in anger, but in restraint. Grief still haunted him, not loud, but persistent, like an echo that refused to fade. He looked at her then, the storm gray of his eyes softer than she'd ever seen. "I don't tell many people that. Maybe I shouldn't have told you. But tonight, you looked like someone who understood what it's like to have hope crushed in a single moment." The words settled deep in her chest. He wasn't talking about wealth or status or appearances. He was offering truth, vulnerability, a glimpse of the man behind the legend. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed sharply. The tension snapped. Ethan glanced at the screen, his entire posture shifting to steel in an instant. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "Work." He stepped away to answer. Ava stood alone before the windows, staring at the glittering city below. And in that moment, she understood the truth that the world would never see. He may have been the man who built everything, but in this vast and quiet kingdom, he had no one to share it with. Until tonight. Ava wandered slowly through the penthouse, while Ethan's voice drifted from the terrace, low and controlled, sharpened by whatever crisis demanded his attention. She could sense the shift even from a distance. A man who had shown her a fragile truth minutes before had been replaced by the CEO the world recognized. A man made of command and pressure, a man who couldn't afford to crack. She stopped before a framed photograph sitting on a minimalist console table. It was old, grainy. A teenage boy stood between two smiling adults in front of a brick building. The boy's expression held a spark she didn't recognize in Ethan now. There was hope in that child, something unscarred. Ava touched the frame gently. Was this the last photo before the Ravenswood fire? Before his world burned? Ethan's footsteps returned, measured, heavy. The mask of business resolved slowly, reluctantly, into the more vulnerable man she had glimpsed moments ago. Sorry. He ran a hand through his hair, tension still clinging to him. That was my operations director. There's a legal issue in the Chicago district. It can wait until morning, but they wanted answers now. Ava nodded, though she wasn't sure what to say. She wasn't part of this world. She didn't understand boardroom emergencies or multinational responsibilities. She understood broken hearts and fractured families. She understood how silence could feel like suffocation. Ethan followed her gaze to the photograph. My father called me Anthony. No one else did. Ethan's voice softened, the edges losing their razor sharpness. When I took over the company after the fire, I stopped using the name. It felt like a weight, a reminder of everything I had lost and everything I had to become. Anthony was a boy who thought the world was safe. Ethan is the man who learned otherwise. Ava turned to him. You don't have to choose between them. You're still both. He looked at her as if she had spoken something no one had dared to say to him. The air shifted, warmer, clearer, more dangerous. You talk like you know me, Ethan murmured. Like you see past all of this. She hesitated. Maybe I see what you try so hard to hide. He took a slow step toward her, and something in the room tightened, pulling them closer in a gravity neither of them was prepared for. A soft chime broke the moment. The elevator, opening. A man in a tailored charcoal suit stepped inside the penthouse without waiting for permission. He moved like someone accustomed to entering any space he wanted. His eyes swept over Ava, assessing, calculating, dismissing. Ethan's entire body went rigid. Damien, what are you doing here? Damien Hale, COO of Fairchild Industries, ruthlessly brilliant, perfectly controlled. Ethan's right hand, and according to business magazines, the heir apparent if anything ever happened to Ethan. Damien's smile was thin. We have a problem, one you won't want making the morning news. A tension shot through the room, cold, sharp. Ava instinctively stepped back. Ethan's voice hardened. Whatever it is, it can wait. It cannot, Damien replied, turning slightly so only Ethan could hear the next words. The Ravenswood file resurfaced. Ava felt the air shift around Ethan like a lightning strike. His breath left him in a silent exhale. Damien continued. Someone sent it to the press. Anonymous leak. If it goes live tonight, it will destroy everything. Ethan's world began to tilt, shadows from his past roaring back with brutal force. Ava watched him, her heart hammering. She had no idea what the Ravenswood file was, but judging by the fear in Ethan's eyes, it wasn't just a reminder of the fire. It was something far worse, something that could break him. And she was now standing in the center of it. The moment Damien's words settled into the room, something inside Ethan shifted, as if an invisible cord had been cut. His expression went flat, unreadable, the kind of composure that wasn't calm but controlled, teeth clenched under the mask. Ava had seen him vulnerable, kind, even shaken. But this was different. This was the version of him that ran empires and buried threats before they could breathe. She felt suddenly like an intruder standing inside a war room. Damien threw a quick glance at her, eyes sharp, calculating again. Are we discussing this in front of company? Ethan stepped slightly closer to Ava, not touching her, but shielding her just enough to make a point. We are discussing nothing until you tell me exactly what leaked. Damien exhaled, annoyed but resigned. Ravenswood isn't just about the fire, Ethan. It's the investigation that followed.
The one you sealed. The one no one was ever supposed to see.
Ava's pulse quickened. She didn't know the details, but she knew the pain behind that word. Ravenswood wasn't just a place. It was the fault line running through his life. Damien continued, voice lower. The report included images of the collapsed structure, safety memos your parents filed, testimony from other workers. It also includes your statement, the one you made before the trust was transferred to you, the one that could be twisted to look like a conflict of interest. Something dark flickered across Ethan's face. A warning, a silent threat. Who leaked it? We're working on it, Damien replied. But my bet? Sterling Innovations. They've been circling like vultures for months. A scandal of this scale would tank your stock value long enough for a hostile takeover. Ava understood enough to feel the chill. This wasn't just a business rumor. It was a coordinated attack, designed to strike where Ethan was weakest. Damien looked at him, his tone softening slightly. Whatever you decide to do next, you can't afford distractions. Not right now. Ava flinched at the word. Distraction. She knew it wasn't subtle. Damien wanted her gone. Out of the penthouse. Out of Ethan's orbit. Out of the way. Ethan didn't respond. Instead, he turned to the window, facing the city as if it held answers. Lights shimmered below, steady and indifferent, cold against the turmoil inside him. Ava moved toward him, her voice gentle. Ethan, what is Ravenswood really? He closed his eyes. For a moment, he looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, torn between the truth and the instinct to protect it. When he finally spoke, the words were brittle. Ravenswood was the factory where they died. The official report blamed faulty wiring, but the truth is that I pushed for accountability so hard that it triggered a political storm. Workers lost jobs, families suffered, the press attacked me, and the company used every mistake I made as fuel. I tried to save them. Instead, I destroyed lives. Ava reached out slowly, fingers brushing his arm. You were 19. You were grieving. You were trying to do the right thing. His expression twisted, bitter. Intentions don't matter in headlines. Damien stepped closer, impatience returning. We need to move, Ethan. Press release, legal containment, crisis management. Every second we stand here, the fire spreads. Ethan turned back to Ava, and for the first time since Damien arrived, he looked truly afraid. Not of the leak, not of the company, of losing her. Ava felt it too, a fragile thread connecting them, pulled suddenly taut. Ethan's voice softened. Stay, please, not as a distraction, but because I can't face this alone. And for the first time that night, the fracture in his world widened enough for her to step through. Ava stayed. Even when every instinct warned her she wasn't built for corporate warfare, she stayed. Ethan's eyes, shadowed by old bruises life had never let him heal, held her in place with a gravity she couldn't fight. Damien watched the silent exchange with thinly veiled irritation, but he said nothing. He simply adjusted his cufflinks, a gesture sharp with impatience. We have an hour at most before this surfaces, Damien said. I'll send the crisis team to your office. No, Ethan replied. Bring them here. Damien blinked, surprised. Here? With her? Yes. Ava saw it then, a subtle crack in Damien's composure. Not jealousy, fear. Not of her, but of what she represented. Something unpredictable introduced into Ethan's carefully controlled world. Damien left without another word, leaving a sharp, uncomfortable quiet behind. Ava exhaled slowly. Ethan, do you want to tell me what's really in that file? He sank into one of the leather chairs, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. She sat across from him, waiting. He didn't hide behind business speak or corporate phrasing this time. I blamed the wrong person. The words were soft, but heavy enough to tilt the room. Ethan stared at the floor. After the fire, I wanted answers. I wanted justice. But I was angry, too angry. I directed that anger at the wrong executive. I went to the press before verifying the evidence. He lost his career, his family, his health. And when the truth surfaced, it was too late. The company paid him off, sealed the documents, buried everything. But I couldn't undo what I'd done. Ava felt a pressure in her chest. You were a kid who lost everything. That doesn't justify ruining someone else's life, Ethan murmured. Ravenswood is the one stain on my record that is real, not fabricated, not twisted, real. And if this leak exposes it, the board will view me as a liability. She touched his hand gently. People make mistakes, good people too. What matters is who you became afterward. Ethan looked up at her as if she had handed him oxygen he didn't know he needed. Footsteps echoed from the private elevator, and the crisis team entered like a small army. Suits, tablets, phones buzzing with aggressive urgency. Damien led them, gaze flicking to Ava with unmistakable disapproval. The next 30 minutes were a blur of legal jargon, rapid decisions, and media calculations. Ava stood back, feeling like a spectator at a chess match played at lightning speed. Damien strategized. Lawyers dictated statements. Analysts projected stock trends. They spoke of Ethan as a symbol, a leader, an asset, not as a man. Not the man Ava had watched bear his grief only hours before. When the team finally dispersed, leaving a battlefield of coffee cups and open laptops behind, Ethan turned back to Ava. His shoulders sagged, the weight of everything crushing down on him again. "They're going to spin it," he said. "Make it look like I covered it up, like I exploited the tragedy for profit." Ava moved beside him. "Ethan, look at me." He did, slowly. "No headline defines you. No leak erases the man you've become. You said Ravenswood made you who you are, but I think it revealed who you were always meant to be." Her voice was a whisper of truth he didn't know how to accept. He reached for her, his fingers brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. The world around them, filled with glass walls and glittering city lights, fell into silence. Then his phone buzzed again. The color drained from his face. "What now?" Ava asked softly. Ethan swallowed hard. "The leak's already spreading, and there's more." A photo surfaced, of us, leaving the restaurant. And suddenly, Ava knew. This wasn't just a corporate leak. Someone was coming for them both, and the night was far from over. The photo wasn't flattering, not because of how they looked, but because of what it implied. Ethan handed Ava his phone, his jaw tight, eyes storm dark. She stared at the image on the screen, the two of them leaving the restaurant together, close enough to look intimate, the streetlights casting them in a warm glow that felt criminal under the harsh interpretation of public judgment. "Trending already," Ethan said quietly. His voice was stripped of emotion, as though drained by the night's unending blows. Ava scrolled down. Headlines screamed accusations she hadn't imagined possible. Billionaire caught with mystery woman amid scandal. Fairchild distracted by new romance while company burns. Who is she, and what is she hiding? The comments were worse, pitiless, ruthless. A bonfire fueled by strangers who knew nothing about her but wrote as if they owned her story. Some mocked her, some called her opportunistic, some demanded her past, some demanded her disappearance. Ava swallowed, her voice barely steady. "They don't know me. They don't want to," Ethan replied. "Not tonight." Damien re-entered, as if summoned by crisis. His expression was carved from stone. "This is exactly what I warned you about. They will blame her, and by extension, blame you." Ava felt it like a physical blow. Not the accusation, the way Damien said her, as if she were a contaminant, a liability, something Ethan should never have touched. "Enough," Ethan snapped, the ice in his voice startling. "She stays. She's not the problem." Damien paused, recalibrated, then softened his tone. "Ethan, this isn't personal. This is optics. The public is treating this like a scandal. The board is nervous, and Sterling Innovations is taking advantage of the noise." Ava frowned. Sterling again. They were everywhere in this storm, a shadow in every corner. Suddenly, her phone dinged. She glanced down and inhaled sharply. A paparazzi photo of her standing at the school gates with her students. Caption for maximum cruelty. "The teacher behind the billionaire. Who is she really?" Ethan's entire body stiffened. They're digging into your private life. They'll camp outside your school.
They'll go after your students.
A spike of fear shot through her. The thought of those kids dragged into this because of her made something inside her crawl. Ethan paced, running a hand through his hair. I need to shut this down, now, before it spreads further. Damien folded his arms. You can't fight the conversation. It's already global. What you need is a narrative shift, a distraction, something that moves the spotlight away from her. No, Ava's voice was quiet but firm. I won't be erased so your board can breathe. Ethan stopped pacing. Damien stared at her, incredulous. Ava, this isn't about pride, it's survival. She stepped forward, the fear still there but wrapped in something stronger. I won't hide. I won't pretend I wasn't with him. And I won't let anyone paint me as something I'm not. Ethan's eyes softened in a way they hadn't all night. He moved toward her, slowly, as if afraid she'd shatter. You don't have to do this. Maybe not, but you're not facing this alone.
Damien muttered,
This is a mistake. But Ethan ignored him entirely. Instead, he touched Ava's cheek gently, grounding himself in her presence. His voice dropped to a quiet vow. Then we face it together. Before she could answer, another alert appeared on the screen. A video this time, claimed to be leaked security footage. Ethan's name was in the title. Damien swore under his breath. Ava clicked it, and her blood froze. The footage showed Ethan inside an office. A woman leaned toward him. The angle made it appear intimate, too intimate. Ava recognized the woman instantly, Victoria Sterling. And the war officially began. The room fell silent as the video played, its grainy footage flickering across Ethan's phone screen like a specter crawling out of the past. It wasn't explicit. It didn't need to be. The camera angle made it look as if Ethan and Victoria were sharing a secret, something close, something forbidden. Victoria's hand brushed his wrist, his head tilted toward her. The air between them seemed charged, except Ava already knew enough to sense the lie. This is edited, Ethan said, his voice controlled but icy. Frozen, calculated, dangerous. Damien leaned over, eyes narrowing. The timestamp is real, the footage is real, but the angle, it's doctored, stitched from multiple cameras. Someone blended them to create a false narrative. Victoria, Ava whispered before she could stop herself. The name hung in the air like smoke. Damien's jaw tightened. Sterling Innovations benefits from destabilizing us. But that's personal. That's vindictive. Ethan paced again, but this time it wasn't frustration driving him. It was fury, slow burning, lethal, controlled only by a thin layer of discipline. One wrong move and he would explode. She thinks she can manipulate this, he growled. She thinks she can take everything I've built and twist it into a weapon. Ava watched him carefully. This wasn't about business anymore. This was about betrayal. Why her? Ava asked softly. What does she want? Damien answered first. Power, legacy, control. She's been waiting for a fracture in your image for years, and now she's using Ava as leverage. Ava felt a chill. So this wasn't random. It wasn't just corporate sabotage. She was a target, a pawn. Ethan stopped pacing and turned to her. But then something shifted in the room. His expression softened, not with weakness, but with resolve. She's trying to isolate me, to make me doubt myself, to make me doubt you. Ava swallowed. And is it working? Ethan stepped closer until the chaos of the night blurred behind him. Ava, she said, lifting her chin, I don't doubt you, not for a second. It wasn't a grand declaration. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, firm. A vow made not in passion, but in clarity. A breath left her chest she hadn't realized she was holding. Then Damien's phone buzzed. He checked the screen and swore under his breath. They released the rest. The rest? Ava echoed. Damien turned the screen toward them. Tabloids were exploding with new headlines. A full photo set. Ethan and Victoria at a bar, at a conference lobby, leaving the same elevator. Each shot framed to imply intimacy, a curated catalog of implication. I wasn't alone with her in any of these, Ethan muttered. There were crowds, people everywhere. She staged all of it. Ava looked closer. Every photo had one thing in common: the angles. Always from behind plants, corners, reflections. Someone had followed them. Someone had planned this. This is obsessive, Ava said. This isn't business. This is personal. Very personal, Damien agreed. Ava's stomach twisted. She wasn't a stranger to manipulation, but this was a different level. Calculated, weaponized, designed to destroy reputations, relationships, sanity. Then another alert popped up. A new headline. Sources claim mystery woman is the cause of Fairchild's breakdown. Is this the woman destroying Fairchild Industries? Leaked email suggests internal conflict over a teacher from Eastwood High. Ava recoiled. They found her school, her town, her entire life. Her chest tightened. My students, they'll be dragged into this. Not if I stop it, Ethan said with sudden, forceful certainty. She met his eyes. In them, she didn't see a billionaire, or a CEO, or a man under siege. She saw someone terrified of losing her. The crisis team returned, phones buzzing, screens flashing, Damien leading them like a general. We need to act now, Damien said. The board wants a statement. The public demands a villain. Sterling is pushing the narrative hard. If we don't countermove, they'll bury us. Ethan straightened, stepping forward with a sudden clarity. Then we counter. Ava touched his arm. And what about us? He looked at her, something fierce igniting behind his eyes. We fight back together. And in that moment, she believed him, even as the world sharpened its knives. The crisis strategy unfolded like a storm across the penthouse. Damien moved with sharp, practiced efficiency, barking orders into his phone while scrolling through dozens of incoming reports. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city glittered with indifference, unaware that inside this glass fortress, 3 lives were being rearranged under the harsh weight of public scrutiny. Ava stood near the terrace door, trying to breathe. The headlines, the photos, the twisted footage. It was too much, too fast, too vicious. She wasn't built for this world, a world where a stranger could fabricate a narrative and millions would swallow it whole. Ethan approached her quietly, as if sensing her unraveling. You don't have to stay, Ava. You didn't ask for any of this. She turned to him, her chest tight. Do you want me to leave? He blinked, pained. No, God, no. But I'm not sure I know how to protect you from this. Her voice softened. Maybe I don't need you to protect me. Maybe I just need you to choose me. A silence stretched between them, delicate and trembling. Before Ethan could answer, Damien's voice cut through the room. We have another problem. Ava flinched. Of course there was more. Damien set his tablet down on the counter, the screen filled with a new headline. Ethan leaned over to read it, his shoulders locked. A whistleblower steps forward with documents linking Fairchild to safety violations. Ava's breath hitched. But that's impossible. Ethan, he built his entire company on safety, on protecting people, on the opposite of what happened to his parents. I know, Ethan said quietly, jaw clenched. This is fabricated. Damien nodded. But fabricated or not, it's convincing. Sterling Innovations has resources, connections, and these documents? They're crafted by someone who knows our internal processes. Someone with inside access. A traitor, Ava whispered. Damien nodded. Or more than one. The room seemed to tilt. Ethan stepped back, bracing against the marble counter. First the Ravenswood leak, then the photos, then the edited footage. Now this. It's a coordinated takedown. They're trying to destroy everything connected to me. Including me, Ava thought, but didn't say. Damien folded his arms, expression grim. The board wants a meeting. Tonight. They want a temporary leave of absence. Ava's stomach dropped.
They want to strip you of control." Ethan said nothing. Damien continued, "And if you don't agree, they'll vote you out, publicly." Ava felt something inside her ignite. "They can't do that. He built this company." "They can," Damien countered, "and they will if they think he's a liability." Ethan finally spoke. "Let them call the vote." Damien looked at him sharply. "Ethan, no." "I'm done hiding," Ethan said. "If I bend now, I'll break later. They want to fight, they'll get one." Ava reached for his hand.
"And what about us? We're tangled in this now." He laced their fingers together tightly. "Then we stay tangled. I'm not letting them use you to weaken me, and I'm not letting fear decide the future." Her breath caught. For a moment, he was the man from the terrace again, the one who whispered truths into the night, stripped of armor. Then her phone buzzed. A single notification. A message from an unknown number. She opened it and felt her bloodstream turn to ice. "Ethan Fairchild isn't who you think he is. He's lied to you too. Meet me tonight if you want the truth." A location pinged beneath the text. Ava froze. Ethan saw her expression and stepped closer. "What is it?" She hesitated. For the first time since they met, she wasn't sure if she wanted him to know. Because the fear dawning inside her was simple, devastating, and impossible to ignore. What if Victoria wasn't lying? Ava stared at the message, its words seeping into her mind like poison. The room faded, the city lights blurred. For a moment, she heard nothing. Not Damien's terse phone calls, not the distant hum of traffic below, not even Ethan's voice calling her name. Truth. Lied. "Meet me tonight." Her hand trembled, gripping the phone so tightly her knuckles whitened. Ethan stepped closer, concern tightening his expression. "Ava, what's wrong?" She turned the screen toward him. His eyes flicked over the message, and a muscle in his jaw tightened. "Someone is trying to manipulate you." She wanted to believe that. God, she wanted to. But doubt had already crawled into the cracks of her exhaustion. Her entire life had been turned inside out in less than 24 hours. Her reputation attacked, her students exposed, her private life dissected by the world like it was entertainment. And now this. Ava swallowed hard. Who would send something like this? Who knows enough about us, about me, to target me directly? Ethan exhaled slowly, fighting for calm. Sterling. Or someone working with her. She's escalating. But Ava heard the hesitation. A hesitation that settled inside her like a cold stone. Damien approached, eyes narrowing. "What does it say?" Ethan shot him a warning look, but Ava answered anyway. "Someone claims Ethan lied to me, that they can show me the truth." Damien's expression darkened instantly. Classic psychological warfare. They want you unstable, distracted, uncertain, and they want Ethan rattled. A divided team is easier to break. Ava understood the logic, but emotional logic was harder. Ethan touched her arm gently. "Ava, don't go. This is exactly what they want. Whoever sent that message is setting a trap." She looked up at him. "Tell me there's nothing they can show me that would hurt me." Ethan froze. And that silence broke something inside her. Ava stepped back, heart twisting. "Then there is something." He reached out, desperate. "Ava, listen to me. Ravenswood wasn't the only thing I buried. There are parts of my past I haven't talked about. Not because I wanted to lie, because I couldn't bear to open those doors again. Not tonight. Not like this." Her breath shook. "Then when?" Ethan took her hand, holding it as if it were the last solid thing in a collapsing world. "When this storm calms. When I can sit with you, face to face, and tell you everything without fear that it will be weaponized." Damien's voice cut in, cold and businesslike. "Ava, if you go, you could be walking into a setup. Paparazzi, a staged encounter, manufactured evidence, anything to sabotage tonight's vote." Ethan's voice dropped, urgent. "Please, don't go." Ava looked at the doorway, at the city beyond the glass, at the message still glowing on her screen. All her life she had run from ghosts, her father's abandonment, her ex's betrayal, her own doubts. She had promised herself she would never be blind again. Never trust so deeply she forgot to protect herself, and now life had placed her at another crossroads. Stay in the penthouse with a man who had given her kindness, vulnerability, and fears he hid from the world. Or walk into the night seeking answers that might shatter everything. Her heartbeat thundered. She whispered, "I need the truth, Ethan, even if it hurts." He stepped forward, panic sharpening his voice. "Ava, I can't lose you to lies." She stepped back. "Then tell me the truth now." His mouth opened, but no answer came, and that was her answer. Ava turned toward the elevator, tears burning but unshed. "I'll come back," she said softly, "but I won't be manipulated. Not by Sterling, not by headlines, and not by you." Ethan reached for her, but she stepped inside the elevator before he could touch her. The doors slid shut between them, sealing his expression of hurt and fear behind silver steel. Ava pressed the button for the lobby. She would go to the meeting point. She would face the darkness, and she would finally learn whose truth she had been living in all along. The night outside hit Ava with a bitter bite, wind threading icy fingers through her hair as she stepped out of the towering glass building. The city felt sharper at this hour, as though every honk and distant siren carried a warning she refused to heed. She followed the map from the anonymous message, each step echoing the pounding of her heart. Her mind spun with possibilities. Sterling, a journalist, a disgruntled employee, someone from Ethan's past he didn't want her to know about, or someone who knew about her father. She pushed the thought aside. She couldn't afford ghosts right now. The meeting point was a derelict structure on the edge of the industrial district, a half-collapsed factory awaiting demolition. Rusted beams jutted out from broken walls, and the faint glow of street lamps cast long, ominous shadows across the cracked pavement. The air smelled of old machinery and damp concrete. Ava hesitated. She had expected someone waiting in the open, a figure in a coat, a voice calling her name. Instead, there was silence, heavy, watching. Then a movement near a shattered doorway made her stiffen. A figure stepped out, hood pulled low, posture rigid. "You shouldn't have come alone," the voice said. Ava froze. She recognized it instantly. Victoria Sterling pushed back her hood. Ava's blood turned cold. "You." Victoria's smile was thin, humorless. "Who else? You think anyone else cares enough to drag you into this mess?" Ava's anger flared. "You sent those pictures, the video. You manipulated everything." Victoria stepped closer, heels crunching on broken glass. "You're a school teacher. I admire the confidence. But you're not stupid. You know how the world works. You know men in power choose women like me. Women who match their world, not." She gestured dismissively. "Someone like you." Ava felt the words hit, each one sharp as a needle. But she didn't flinch. "I'm not here for your insults," Ava said quietly. "You told me Ethan wasn't who I think he is, so talk." Victoria's smile faded. For the first time, Ava saw something vulnerable flicker through her expression. Fear? Regret? Jealousy? A twisted mix of all three. "I didn't mean to hurt him," Victoria said. "Not at first. I've known Ethan for years. I stood by him when the board turned on him. I fought his battles, and he never saw me. Not once. Until you." Ava blinked. This wasn't just sabotage. This was obsession. Victoria continued, her voice cracking. "He needs someone who understands his world, his responsibilities, his burdens. Not someone who collapses under public pressure. Not someone he has to protect." Ava felt heat rise in her chest. "I'm not asking him to protect me." "But he is protecting you," Victoria shot back. "Against the board. Against the media. Against everyone who thinks you're destroying him. And now he's burning everything he built because of you." Ava stepped forward, voice steady. "If you wanted to warn me, you would have just talked. You wouldn't have weaponized the media. You wouldn't have doctored footage. You wouldn't have attacked my students." Victoria flinched. "I never meant for the press to go after your school. But once it starts, you can't control it." Ava's heart hammered. "You still haven't given me the truth." Victoria's expression hardened into something sharp and cold. "You want the truth? Fine. Ethan didn't just make a mistake at Ravenswood. He destroyed the whistleblower, the one who tried to expose the safety violations. He buried the man to protect the company that killed his parents. Ava's breath hitched. No, that didn't sound like Ethan. But doubt crept in anyway. Victoria stepped closer, her voice a whisper. He didn't tell you because he knows you wouldn't stay if you knew. You think you're the light in his life? You're the distraction, the weakness, and he knows it. A sudden sharp crack echoed behind them. Ava spun. A shadow detached itself from the ruins, stepping into the dim light. Her heart nearly stopped. Ethan. His expression was devastated, like a man watching his world fracture in slow motion. Ava, he said, voice raw. Whatever she told you, it's not the truth. But his throat worked with the effort. And Ava knew. Not everything Victoria said was a lie. Ethan took a step forward, reaching out. Ava, her voice trembled. Tell me, did you bury the whistleblower? The world held its breath. Ethan closed his eyes. Yes. The single word detonated in the air. Ava staggered as though struck. Ethan reached for her, but she pulled back like his touch was fire. Victoria watched, victorious but trembling, as if witnessing something she never truly wanted. Ava's tears finally fell. I trusted you, Ethan's voice cracked. And I'm trying to become the man you believe I can be. Ava shook her head, heart splintering. I don't know what to believe anymore. She stepped back, the ruins around her mirroring the ruins inside her chest. Ethan stopped, pain twisting his features. Ava, please, don't walk away. But she already had, and neither of them knew if she would ever walk back.